I've clicked onto the Global Tropical Overview for July the 28th, 2023. As is always the case in these videos, the thoughts expressed here are mine alone, and when making decisions ahead of any tropical cyclones, look towards the local weather office, local emergency management, and local tropical cyclone warning center. So we're here in the West Pacific, and we're going to be staying here for this entire video as we have two significant systems to talk about. We've got Typhoon Doksuri, I almost forgot its name there, but Typhoon Doksuri coming west of Taiwan, getting much closer to a landfall now in China, and that will be happening today local time. And we also have Invest 91W, sorry, no, this is not Invest 91W, this is Tropical Depression 6 by the Joint Typhoon Warning Center. This is Tropical Storm Khanun, I believe, by the Japan Meteorological Agency. Lots of different variations in the designation for this, but we've got another system forming behind it, and this is another potential significant storm as this comes north. But of course, we're going to stick to the one that's the most imminent threat right now, and that is Typhoon Doksuri. And this system has been very interesting to watch south of Taiwan because we talked about, in my last video, how this system was still fairly large and it had failed an eye wall replacement cycle because of its land interaction with Luzon. And the question was, would the size of the system perhaps hold back the system from intensifying much at all, primarily because of the more shallow waters here between Taiwan and China. The unfortunate thing is that is seemed to have not held it back. This system has been very weird. We've had continuously an outer eye wall stay dominant on the outer fringe of a very, very, very compact core. And I might be able to, if I get this back to 100 frames, and this is going to load for a little bit, but if I can get this here, you'll see, yeah, if I go back here, this small core actually cleared out its eye much earlier today, and this likely intensified quite a bit. Now, to what degree this intensified, that is unknown. The Joint Typhoon Warning Center has this at about a Category 3 right now. I can actually check the ATCF file. So they've got it at about 120 miles per hour right now. There are some estimates from radar considering that could be, plus or minus 10 knots of that. Could be a Category 4 right now, by all that we know. This is a very, very compact core, and a lot of satellite estimates are not going to be able to catch this. Now, some good news, potentially, it looks like, is that this eye is getting disrupted. You can see, since this amazing view earlier today, we started to see this eye become much less apparent on infrared, and we've also seen a lot of warming of the cloud tops. If we look at the microwave pass, you can see there's that outer eye wall, and this, from what I can tell, at least from yesterday, this seems to have contracted a little bit. And what it might be doing now is it might be getting to a point to where it's starting to disrupt this inner core. But you can see just how small that core is. It may not be appearing like it actually is on microwave just because of its tiny size, but you can just see how intense that is. When you see very pink colors on this form of microwave imagery, that's a very, very strong core. And this can bring extreme winds to a very limited region. That is some good news. We're not having a big, widespread, major typhoon event, it looks like. Now, there are some strong winds in this outer eye wall. I believe they might even top 100 miles per hour on this outer eye wall. But this inner eye wall is really where you've got the strongest winds of major typhoon force. Now, again, it looks like the system might be weakening, but it may be a little bit too late for that. This system is already pretty close to the coastline. It's tracking there pretty fast, so it may not be weakening too much, and we may still have a significant system coming our way in China today. And alongside with this large size, you can also get extreme storm surge on especially areas east, or up the coastline rather, from where the storm comes in, from the stronger winds, especially near this smaller inner core. Now, something that has maybe allowed it to do so is, well, this core is very small, and I've talked about this before, back when Cyclone Freddy was active, when it was very small. With small storms like this, I say small, it has a very small inner core, but overall, the overall storm is big. it's a very weird situation, but with a small core, you can get the winds to increase very, very fast. But the downside of these smaller cores for the typhoons and hurricanes and cyclones is they are very weak. They are very susceptible to change. If a little bit of shear or a little bit of dry air gets in, that can kill the circulation. Well, maybe not kill the circulation, but it can really disrupt the small eye, and that can have it weaken quite a bit. Now, again, I don't know if it's going to be able to weaken to an appreciable amount before landfall here, as it is, again, tracking pretty fast, and we're already pretty close to landfall. And also, again, this outer eye wall has very strong winds in it that could top 100 miles per hour. Very significant here, and this is going to be impacting portions of Taiwan and China. Now, another thing that has also likely helped it, along with the small size, is of fairly warm sea surface temperatures. Now, here the waters are very shallow, and you can sort of get a gauge of that if we look at the oceanic heat content. You can see as you get towards the coastline, it turns to more like a shelf water. I guess sort of like if you're in the U.S., sort of like the Gulf Coast in Florida, that sort of a shelf effect, and that allows the waters to get very warm. And you can see this is estimating 32 degrees Celsius waters here, which is very warm. So that would definitely bring a lot of energy for a small core as well. It would likely be able to take advantage of that. But from what I can tell, I'm just keep looking at this. It looks like that eye wall has contracted a little bit, the outer one, and it looks like it might be trying to go through with the eye wall replacement cycle, but that's probably not going to be able to complete, just given the amount of time it has left before landfall. But this will certainly be an interesting storm to look back on, potentially for further case studies on storms like this, with structures like this with the eye. It's not your typical structure that you see. All right, enough of me talking about Doksuri. We're going to now move to Tropical Storm Khanun. This is, for reference here, it's in between the Mariana Islands and the Philippines. You can see this broad area of thunderstorm activity here. This is forecast to become a significant system as it comes north, and we could be looking at significant impacts for the southern Japanese islands and even portions of China. And even Taiwan cannot be ruled out here for potential impacts. There's that natural track uncertainty that exists with a longer range forecast here, going out to 5 days. But if we look at the current satellite imagery, we can see it's a bit difficult to see the low-level flow on the infrared loop, but we have some northeasterly winds on the northwest side. These look to bend into northwesterlies on the southern side, and then if you look here, you can sort of see those winds wrapping around on the eastern side to the north side, giving a general circulation right here underneath this convection. And if we look at an ASCAP pass we got earlier today, the circulation is not overall the best. You can see it is fairly broad overall, but I guess you could call this a tropical cyclone right now. But it certainly has some work to do before it actually intensifies at all to a significant degree. Now, this organized convection, or this convection is getting more organized, so that might be a sign that the system is trying to develop. Now, it does have some shear being imparted upon it. You can see some of the outflow from Doksuri coming down here, putting some pressure onto the storm. Eventually, this is going to end as Doksuri weakens, and eventually we're going to have the system in a very favorable environment, much like Doksuri was in when it was heading towards the Philippines. And now here's a GFS initialization. You can see there's the outflow from Doksuri. That also might have been something that helped it intensify some today, the increased outflow, but you can see that coming down and shearing part of our tropical storm down here. But as time goes on, you'll notice that this flow starts to weaken as the system weakens over China, and we do get this upper level low development here north of the system, and there is the possibility that this brings some shear to the storm. But from what I've seen on modeling, this has been depicted more to increase outflow. So it may help the storm more so rather than harm the storm overall. But you can see eventually that that low does weaken, likely due to the convection, the warm core nature of this tropical storm here. But you can see after that, very strong outflow expanding on the northern side, some outflow still on the southern side. But you can see This is a low shear environment. This is a sounding that I got from the GFS around the time of that frame, and you can see the very low shear and the high relative humidity. That's a very, very favorable environment. And the sea surface temperatures are warm as well. You can see this is a Joint Typhoon Warning Center track coupled with the sea surface temperatures, and you can see 29 to 30 degrees Celsius waters here throughout its entire track. Now, the oceanic heat content is lower as you go further north, but this system, with its forward motion, especially as it comes towards the cooler or lower oceanic heat content values, the forward motion might be able to negate most of the impacts of the lower oceanic heat content. And that appears to be what models like the GFS are showing. And you can see the significant intensification taking place here. Now, as we get towards the southern Japanese islands, there is a possibility that there is some shear put upon the system. There is forecast to be an upper ridge here over South Korea. And the GFS does not show this being too strong of a shearing, but the European shows perhaps a little bit of easterly shear upon the storm from this bridge, and that could put some pressure onto the storm. I don't know if that would really be inhibitive overall, but it could negate some of the intensification that could take place in this area. But at that point, it wouldn't really matter. The storm's already in land areas. You can see the southern Japanese islands already passed there, and it's heading towards China as a significant typhoon. And now the Joint Typhoon Warning Center has looked at the model guidance, and they've agreed that significant intensification is likely with this system, and I'd have to agree given the overall low shear, highly divergent environment. And you can see forecasting a Category 3 here as it comes through the southern Japanese islands with max winds, I believe, 105 to 110 knots. That's about 120 to 125 miles per hour. So we could be looking at yet another Category 3 or Category 4 typhoon come up here. Now, the European is much weaker with the system. Between the two models, I more trust the GFS here on intensity. The GFS can tend to go strong with systems, but given the environment, I'm more inclined to believe that the system would intensify significantly, like the GFS does show, and the European does have a bias to going weaker with these systems overall. Now I can go to the European ensembles, and I can look here, and you can see we have some ensembles here, much more than the parent model, showing significant intensification, getting down into the yellow and pink colors here on this chart. Now, again, significant intensification is possible here, and for those in the southern Japanese islands, in China, and Taiwan, and even mainland Japan, stay tuned to your local weather office, the Japan Meteorological Agency, as well, as they're going to have the best information ahead of the storm as it comes through. And I'll, of course, have future videos as we continue to have an active period in the West Pacific going through the month of July. But that's it for now. Thanks for watching.